I would like to call to session the Planning Commission meeting. Order roll call.
Bruce Shoemaker. Present.
Scott Jensen.
Bill Blank.
Jeanette Santiago.
Hello.
Rita.
Hi, Rita. We're just doing roll call.
Thank you.
And Marissa Jacobs.
You might.
Rita,
Yes.
can you say your name for roll call, please?
Oh, sure. Rita Bernhard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is approval of minutes for August 12 and August 26.
I think actually, Scott, it's elect planning commission chair. 2.1.
Yes, you're correct. So we have a vacant chair position, and we need to elect a new chair and vice chair. Are there any nominations for chair?
Nominate you, Scott. Here.
I will accept the nomination. Any other nominations for chair? Seeing none, I'm going to call for the vote, and I will abstain. Commissioners, if you, what do you say?
I second.
Yeah. Someone have to second.
Jeanette,
Yeah,
Jeanette seconded.
yeah,
Yeah.
seconded. So, all right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. I will be serving as the chair. So next up is the vice chair position, which I can no longer fill. Any nominations for filling the vice chair position?
Okay, I'll nominate Bill. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. But is there anybody else? No.
Is there anybody else that would like, somebody would like to nominate?
I see a little gender diversity here.
Yeah. Rita, are you trying to say something?
No.
Well, I mean, I get your point, Bill. So if Rita wants to, I will nominate Rita.
I'm going to decline.
Then I
Thank you,
second
Bill,
the
for the
motion.
offer.
Then I second the motion for Bill.
Hearing no other nominees, all those in favor of Bill as vice chair, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you. I don't know why, but.
All right, now approval of minutes for August 12 and August 26. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes?
Nothing that I saw sprung out.
There was the one update that Liz had put in
Except
the
for
minutes
this.
for the,
But
for the 26th, I believe that was. Okay, hearing no comments on the minutes, I would entertain a motion and the August 26th as amended because of the correction.
I so move.
All right, is there a second?
take a second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of August 12, 2021 and August 26, 2021 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
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 I vote on it. I wasn't here on the 26th. I approve.
Yeah.
Well, you read.
Okay, that's it. Now we have citizen input. This is for public comment for things not on the agenda. Anybody want to say anything not related to items on the agenda? Anybody online? Okay. Hearing none, we will move on to new business. Docket SDR 1-21 and SLDP 4-21. This is OMIC R&D has requested approval of an application for site development review to allow for the construction of a 30,000 square foot additive manufacturing and research facility and associated site amenities. Would you like to take it away?
After you read the open.
Oh. I am calling this consolidated quasi-judicial and limited land use public hearing to order to consider an application for site development review, SDR 1-21, and sensitive lands development permit, flooding, SLDP 4-21. Testimony and evidence must address the criteria that apply to the decision as described in the staff report or to the criteria the person testifying believes to apply to the decision. Persons may speak only after being recognized by the chair and must come forward to the microphone and state their name and city for the record. Only testimony that is relevant to the application will be considered. The failure to raise and clarify an issue to afford all parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on the issue. In regards to the sensitive lands development permit, the Planning Commission will conduct a hearing in a quasi-judicial capacity. In other words, like a trial court where the Planning Commission serves as finders of fact. Verbal testimony is allowed for a quasi-judicial decision. This is a consolidated hearing, and the site development review application shall be processed as a limited land use decision, which does not take verbal testimony because it does not require interpretation or the exercise of policy or legal judgment. Therefore, any verbal testimony shall be limited to issues related to the sensitive lands permit approval. Does any planning commissioner wish to declare any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest regarding this matter?
I do know Al Peterson there personally, so just for the record, but that would not affect any decision I might make. So I had no problem.
Great.
Same, I know Al.
Okay.
We haven't seen each other in years.
All right. Anybody else? Okay. Does any party wish to challenge any commissioner's impartiality or legal capacity to participate in this matter? All right. Seeing no challenge, the order of the hearing will be the staff report, then the applicant's presentation, then proponents, then opponents, then rebuttal by the applicant, then a staff response. Thereafter, the hearing will be closed for consideration of the matter by the commission. The decision of the Planning Commission can be appealed to the City Council. Now, will you take it away?
Okay, absolutely. Let's see, I just want to mention that the subject property is located at 33701 Charles T. Parker Way, located northwest of West Lane Road and Charles T. Parker Way intersection. First, I'll go over the subject site and observations within the beginning of the staff report, and then I'll point out where the applicable approval criteria and findings are located. And then we'll go over staff recommendation and conditions of approval. So beginning on page 17 of the packet. So the subject site, in 2014, a minor partition created parcels 1 and 2 of partition plat 2014-9. You can see that on page 69, which is the existing conditions map. Those parcels are each identified on that map. Parcel 1 is 5.46 acres. Parcel 2 is 4.72 acres. The subject site for this application is parcel 2. Parcel 1 contains the existing Oregon Manufacturing Innovation Center building, which I'll refer to as OMIC for short. It also contains several outbuildings, the parking lot, a sewer pump station. Parcel 2 is currently vacant with the exception of a driveway and curb cut, which was installed as part of Charles T. Parker Way road improvements. And that driveway curb cut is the main access to both parcels 1 and 2. In 2020, Oregon Tech recorded a deed restriction declaration, which consolidated parcels 1 and 2 together as one for purposes of planning and zoning considerations. And that's because the only access to the parcel 1, which had the existing use, was located on the other parcel. So now those 2 parcels are bound together for purposes of our review. Both parcels were previously part of a rock quarry operation. They've subsequently been filled, reclaimed, and sold for industrial development. The city did issue an early grading permit last year for parcel 2, which allowed for a surcharge of rock to be placed on the building pad location. That acted to consolidate the soils in order to ready the site for development. As part of a previous minor modification to the existing OMIC site, we did approve some renovations to the existing building. That will also make site improvements, including adding additional paved parking, some exterior mechanical units, some exterior storage with fenced screening, and it will also connect the building to city utilities. And the city recently issued that building permit approval, so that should get started here fairly soon. The subject site is designated as industrial on the comp plan map. The site is zoned light industrial. Adjacent zoning is light industrial to the west, south, and east. To the north, zoning is RR5, which is rural residential in Columbia County. And then to the northeast is a light industrial zoned parcel. The uses then, to the west of parcel 1, the light industrial parcel is vacant. To the south is Charles T. Parker Way. Beyond that is land within Columbia County. To the east is vacant light industrial zone land. To the north is vacant RR5 land in Columbia County, and then the northeast is a non-conforming residential single-family use in the light industrial zoning district. Under observations, again, the request is for site development review approval of a new 30,000 square foot additive manufacturing and research facility. And then parking to the west and north of the new building. They also propose an outdoor plaza for temporary events like Manufacturing Day in that northern parking lot or adjacent to there. And then you can see this on the site plans. We have a civil and architectural site plan. Those are on pages 71 and 72 of your packet. The applicant also requests a sensitive lands flooding permit. And this is due to the fact that the majority of the site was previously within the 1% annual chance floodplain, which is commonly referred to as the 100-year floodplain. However, during that previous time, the property was filled during the reclamation of the quarry. So 2 letter of map revisions based on fill were approved by FEMA for this site. I've listed the case numbers here. They are included as exhibits 9 and 10. For short, we've referred to it as LOMR Fs. Those LOMR Fs officially removed the majority of the parcels from the regulated 100-year floodplain. If you see on pages 111 through 113, so let me just read this. The applicant did submit a sensitive lands letter. It does demonstrate that no portion of the parcel is currently below the base flood elevation, but there was a sort of a discrepancy in the legal descriptions for the LOMR Fs that were approved. And that inadvertently left portions of the site still within the mapped floodplain. So since a subsequent letter of map amendment had not been completed to correct the situation, the city is requiring the applicant to apply for the sensitive lands permit just to demonstrate compliance with our floodplain ordinance. And then there's additional findings related to this in chapter 17.84. There's a couple of conditions of approval related to this as well. The city participates in the community rating system, which is a program within the National Flood Insurance Program. It does mean that we have higher standards than the NFIP minimums. It does require that for any floodplain development permit that we issue where a building is located within the mapped floodplain, that then we need to have a elevation certificate on that building, which is in the conditions of approval. The other option the applicant has is to go ahead and get that letter of map revision prior to the building being finalized. So they have a couple of options there. Down to right-of-way public improvements. The subject site has frontage on Charles T. Parker Way. That was recently constructed. We do not need a right-of-way dedication for this application. The applicant does propose one new driveway entrance, which would need to meet the Public Works design standards. Under vehicular access off-street parking, again, there is an existing driveway access that serves as the main entrance to parcels 1 and 2. And then the applicant proposes to construct a second driveway entrance to be used as a service driveway in the southeast portion of parcel 2. The applicant proposes to construct, I already did that one. The development code has requirements based on, there's 2 different ways to look at this. There's manufacturing facilities and then also research facilities. So manufacturing requires 1 parking space per 500 square feet. And then research facilities require a different, manufacturing is 1 employee for the largest shift, and then research facilities are 1 parking space per 500 square feet. So between the 2 uses, we have 64,000 square feet, which based on the research use would be 128 stalls required. If you're just looking at it strictly from a manufacturing use, then as stated by OMIC, they expect 50 staff between the 2 buildings. The parking standard would be 50. So I've noted here the section in the Scappoose Development Code. When you have a choice between 2 different parking requirements, we're required to go with the greater number of parking spaces. So for this use, that would be 128 stalls. And then I do need to make a correction here. I have here the applicant proposes to provide a total of 153 spaces. That was based on some earlier information that was in the narrative, but when adding up the total stalls for this new building and then the final approved plans for the existing building, it's actually 176. So they are actually providing 176 stalls between the 2 uses. There's additional findings related to this on page 31. In that section of findings, it does correctly state the 176 total stalls. So I'll make that revision. Let's see, on the top of page 19, again, related to this new use, the applicant would also be installing 4 bicycle parking spaces. Under traffic generation, the applicant did submit the required traffic analysis letter. It did estimate that the new development, and this is based on 25 employees in this new building, would generate 13 a.m. peak hour trips and 13 p.m. peak hour trips for a total of 82 daily trips. The traffic analysis letter did provide the required safety analysis within a quarter mile of the development. It looked at crash data, street lighting, access spacing, and connectivity and circulation. Site distance evaluation at the driveway access to Charles T. Parker Way and at the Charles T. Parker Way and West Lane Road intersection was conducted. Site distance at the driveway access met the standards, but the site distance at the intersection of Charles T. Parker Way and West Lane did not meet that standard. In the letter, it mentions that overgrown vegetation is causing that site distance issue. And then on page 38, I have additional findings that I want to point out. And that's that last paragraph. It starts with the traffic engineer recommended approval of vegetation. So when I had the applicant review the proposed conditions of approval, he did mention that the vegetation had already been removed. So Chris and I did a site visit October 21st, and we could tell that some of that vegetation had been removed. However, it did appear that there was some regrowth to the vegetation, but it didn't appear that the recommended site distance was provided. There's also some existing fencing within the right-of-way. And so we have a condition that requires the applicant to confirm that adequate site distance is provided at that intersection prior to final occupancy inspection. It could be the additional, that we need to cut, that vegetation needs to be cut down again. Also, in the findings, I wanted to just note here that if the applicant's traffic engineer determines that adequate site distance can't be met just by the removal of vegetation, that they would document that, which would satisfy this condition of approval. And then the city would work with the adjacent property owner to have that fencing removed from the right of way. And so I just wanted to point that out. And then back to page 19 under lighting, the applicant did submit a site lighting and photometrics plan, which shows the location of the exterior lighting around the site. Under public and private agencies, all required noticing has been provided for this application. Agency comments are attached as exhibits 12 through 16. Let's see, related to agency comments, the PUD requested an easement for the power lines that are going to cross parcels 1 and 2. And so that's in the conditions. And then the Public Works Director commented about drainage from the site entering Charles T. Parker Way. That's also addressed in the conditions. The city did not receive any public comments on this application at all. Under, well, let me point out next, the criteria and findings for approval. So for a light industrial zoning district, the criteria is contained in chapter 17.70. Those findings can be found on pages 20 through 21. Sensitive lands flooding criteria are contained in chapter 17.84. The findings are located on pages 21 through 23. Environmental performance standards criteria are contained in chapter 17.90. Findings are located on pages 24 through 25. Landscaping, screening, and fencing is contained in chapter 17.100. Findings are on pages 25 through 27. Street trees are in chapter 17.104. Findings are found on pages 27 through 28. Off-street parking and loading is found in chapter 17.106. Findings are on pages 28 through 33. Site development review approval criteria found in chapter 17.120. Findings are on pages 33 through 36. And last, street and utility improvement standards are contained in chapter 17.154. And the findings are on pages 36 through 41. And if you turn to page 42, So staff recommendation is on page 42. Based on the findings of facts and the materials submitted by the applicant, staff does recommend that the Planning Commission approve SDR 121-SLDP 4-21, subject to the 25 conditions of approval, the majority of which are boilerplate conditions. And then I would just point out that condition number 13 is related again to the PUD's comment. Condition 18 is related to the Public Works Director's comment. Number 19 is the one I read to you previously about the transportation analysis letter and confirming the adequate site distance is provided. And then 22 and 23 are related to the sensitive lands and just ensuring that we get that elevation certificate or letter of map amendment prior to final occupancy. And that's to document compliance with our floodplain ordinance. The rest of these are just fairly standard conditions. I did want to point out also, we did have an amended finding that was requested, and you have that before you. That is for section 17.100.100. And the amended finding would read, as stated in the narrative, no outside storage is proposed. Loading areas and the trash facilities will be located inside the building. That was just to provide a little further clarification. Yes. That concludes my report.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for staff? Okay. Seeing none, would the applicant please come forward and make their presentation?
All right. I really don't have much to say, but
I ask that you speak directly into the mic. Okay, thank you.
just for tips, I brought renderings. Okay, my name is Al Peterson. I'm an architect in St. Helens, Oregon with Akan Architecture and Design. The address is 101 St. Helens Street, St. Helens, Oregon. I don't have much to add to the staff report. Although I would like to say something from a kind of a personal standpoint, which really has nothing to do with anything. But I'm going to say it anyway. I've lived in Columbia County my entire life. I grew up in St. Helens, lived in Deer Island. I commuted to classes at PCC. I took classes from PCC at St. Helens. I later, went to college, did all that, went to master's program. After I came back to St. Helens with a master's, I was taking a couple of classes occasionally at PCC. But from a personal standpoint, I am thrilled that however the cards fell on the table, that OMIC is in Scappoose and in Columbia County. If it wasn't for OMIC, probably PCC never would have built. And people in our community have been after PCC to actually build something for 20 years. So I am at least. So I am thrilled that this facility is coming to Scappoose. And I hope you all vote for Betsy Johnson for governor.
Oh, my gosh.
So let's get to the application.
This is a big, this is a big deal, a really big deal. As I was reading through all of this, I thought, oh my goodness, finally, after all these years of working toward this type of, development, this community is really going to prosper as
Yes.
time goes on. So I'm really grateful after being involved in a lot of this throughout the years. I really am grateful to see this actually come, to a
Right.
a long different end, I guess, right now, which is going to be pretty positive for the community.
I agree. So to get to the application, well, let me describe very briefly about the renderings we just gave you. Basically, this is going to be very similar to the existing building. It's essentially an industrial steel building, prefabricated metal building. But design-wise, we wanted this to be really an icon that represents what's going on inside the building. So even though it's a steel metal building, what you see is the siding is turned sideways. So it creates kind of a layering effect when you look at the building. And then the parapets are like this, because the whole concept that's going to be occurring inside the building is what's called additive manufacturing. Well, what is that? Well, essentially, if you imagine a inkjet printer on steroids, that is essentially 3D printing. So you have an inkjet printer or a steel printer or a titanium printer doing this and building up in layers metal and creating an object. That's essentially what 3D printing is. And in this case, this facility is going to be researching manufacturing in additive manufacturing, which is essentially different ways of doing that process. So from a design standpoint, we took that concept, took the concept of a basic metal shed, which is what it is, but we have translated that onto the outside of the building. And I think it's going to be a wonderful building, and it's going to be really an icon. We're already in talks with a contractor. OMIC is already working with a contractor, and the metal building subcontractor is actually thrilled about this building. He wants this building to be in like the sheet metal magazine or whatever trade magazine he is in his field. So anyway, now we have attempted, and I think that we have met and conform to everything in the development code. This is an allowed outright use. There is no reason that I could possibly think of for the Planning Commission to deny it. We're providing more than adequate parking. But I do want to say something about that, not necessarily for right today, but maybe in the future. And it really has to do with this idea of manufacturing. Lori talked about it a little bit. What you have is two big buildings, and inside those big buildings are great big machines. But we are having to conform with a parking standard, which is the same, if you look in the development code, is the same as an office building. So, there's enough parking now, but OMIC is planning for the future, and it may in the future build other buildings. But within your own standard, I think at some point you may consider looking at that and maybe not putting such high parking standards on a facility that in reality has great big machines inside, and you're not going to have that many people filling up that parking lot. So in any case, we don't have any problems with the parking thing. We have plenty of parking, so it's not really an issue. The one thing that I do want to kind of make a comment on, and then maybe add a, well, let me talk about this additional amended finding. The building, if you look at page, if you look at the floor plan of the building, or the architectural site plan, and I don't know which sheet that's on.
72.
72 points out, whoops, upside down. You can see the basic floor plan of the building. And essentially it's in two pieces. On the left-hand side are the office areas. And on the right-hand side is the shop area. And we did not put all the machines that are going to be in there because they're still being decided. But basically that big area to the right is the shop. And then further to the right, you can see the trash room up at the north end. And then just below the trash room is the electrical room. And then just below the electrical room, it's not marked on your drawings, but that little bump out of the building, below that is the compressor room. And then below that are the two big HVAC units that are going to be sitting on the ground outside. So the trash room is, all the trash and everything is going to be inside, and all that stuff is going to be inside. So that is where that stuff is on your building plans. So we are already conforming to basically this amended finding. So it's satisfied. So I don't necessarily have a problem with an amended finding. Now, the one last thing that I wanted to talk about is what Lori mentioned related to the traffic analysis. And the only concern I have with condition number 19 is that it's not that clear what it really means. And what I would appreciate if the Planning Commission could add essentially 4 words to that finding, number 19, and reference the section that it's referring to. So something to the effect of per section 17-154 above, or something like that, because I don't think it's clear in the actual findings and or not the findings, but the conditions, what's being talked about. And, you know, I don't want to include this entire paragraph that she added on page 38, but I would like to refer to page 38, which is, you know, number 19. So if you could add that language, I think that makes more clear what specifically the condition really is. So with that, I'll close and answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions for the applicant?
Al, do you see any issues, environmental impact or anything like that with this construction?
No. Well, to me, this is going to actually improve it. You know, right now what you have is a reclaimed rock quarry. And essentially you have a bare piece of property with no topsoil. It's essentially a stripped piece of land. So when this building gets built, you know, they're going to be putting in landscaping and shrubbery and all kinds of things like that. So frankly, no, I don't see any downsides environmentally, if that's what you're asking.
I have a question. So being that it's an innovation, research and development facility, is it going to adapt any of the clean, the green, green standards for of development? Is the building going to be green? Is it like renewable sources and so forth?
Well, not shown on the photographs or the renderings that I put there. They are going to be installing 4 solar panels in the yard, which are actually part of the state mandated green energy requirements for any state funded facility. So the answer in the short answer is yes, because for state funded facility, it's required. We have not gone down the path of what's known as LEED, or I don't know if you're familiar with LEED.
Yes.
We've not gone down that path because in my opinion, it simply adds a lot of administrative costs to a building and don't really get you much for it. In fact, I went just 2 weeks ago. I attended an online seminar with a professor from Harvard who he teaches at Harvard, and he has an office in Boston, and he also has an office in Bangalore, India, I believe. Or it might be Calcutta. Anyway, someone asked him about the kind of that path, and he said something very funny, which I thought it was the perfect statement. He said, well, you know, when you go down that road, you basically set up a whole bunch of problems, and then you come up with a whole bunch of expensive solutions. And the entire audience just busted out laughing because that is absolutely true. When you go down some of those paths, you're setting yourself up for which the only answer is some expensive new technology. And that's not really what we're intending to do at this facility. And frankly, they'd rather spend their money on the research rather than testing out. Their goal in life is to do research on manufacturing, not necessarily do research on green technologies. It's just not what the facility is intended to do.
Well, it's just funny because green technology or clean technology as well is what the administration, the federal administration, is going after. Anyways, I personally, in my line of work, I have seen a lot of DOE getting involved in supporting companies and communities to be more eco-friendly, more green, energy efficient, and so forth. And so I'm wondering, as an innovation research development facility, shouldn't that facility be on top of all of that and be a showcase and be an example of what how green our buildings can be?
Well, I think that I'm going to put Craig on the spot here because Craig a couple of weeks ago made some good comments related to additive manufacturing and how in reality it is greener. and I'm just going to make a short comment and let Craig address it. Basically, you're not wasting, you're in subtractive in the traditional manufacturing process. You're taking a big chunk of metal and then you're sticking it on a lathe and then you're lathing it and all of this stuff flies off and then you're grinding it and then you're using a milling machine to your mill it. And in reality, you're wasting all of that stuff that you just cut off of that piece of metal is waste. Whereas additive manufacturing is the opposite. It takes all these little tiny pieces of metal and adds them up into one object, and there is no waste at all. So, did you want to say something, Craig?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I'm Craig Campbell. I'm not sure what to give as my address. I spend 5 days out of the week in St. Helens at 115 15th Street. And then I go back home to my family on the weekends, and that's 6736 Fenwick Court North in Kaiser. In answer to the commissioner's question, we had a limited amount of funds to build the building that we have. So we had to be fairly frugal as to how we use that money. We are using a fairly unique type of solar panel that looks essentially like a large flower, and it tracks solar energy that way. But what the facility is going to be doing by way of research is to de-risk investment by companies in a technology that will allow them to reduce their economic or their environmental impact by virtue of the benefits associated with additive manufacturing. Those include not using more material than is necessary. And in that also is the ability to print or develop a product on site. You still have to move raw material, but you reduce the amount of economic, I keep saying economic. You don't have the environmental impact of having to move material several times and using carbon impacts by virtue of transportation. There are a series of other benefits that will ultimately derive by the fact that you will have the ability to create far more efficient parts than you can with what is traditional machining, by use of things like internal structures of cooling and heating and sensors that allow you to more efficiently make use of the energy that that part will require. And in addition to that, we're also doing research in different types of alloys. We have a memorandum of understanding with NETL, which is the National Environmental Technology Lab in Energy Lab? Energy Technology Lab. Thank you. That's why I have Josh here. He tells me the answers when I don't get them right. But at any rate, we'll be working with them on creating alloys that do not need rare earth elements in order to produce tools, parts, and things along those lines that, we're using up those resources. So we really have to find an alternative, but at the same time, it's good for the environment if we're being proactive about doing that. The United States is a little bit behind Europe in those efforts, but that's one of the benefits we have by having some very, very bright metallurgists and a lab that's dedicated to that for the federal government down in Albany.
I just add a comment there, or you can answer this, but you've already got a model to follow, which is in England, which is what brought you here. Have you been able to learn from that so that you've actually improved on that model?
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, the Advanced Manufacturing Research Center in Sheffield, England was, of course, our guiding star as to how we were formed. There have been 15 labs like this that have been created around the world. This is the first one that's been done of this nature in the United States. We're also the only one that duplicates the original model, which allows us to respond in creating research in any area that our members and industry requires us to do. So as we're doing now, we started with subtractive manufacturing or traditional machining. Now we're moving into additive manufacturing. We're doing work in robotics, automation. Eventually we'll get into joining. But the great strength of that is by bringing in a variety of industry participants from around the world and have them share their subject matter expertise along with our indigenous researchers at Oregon State, Portland State, Oregon Tech, and here in Scappoose at the OMIC facility. We're able to bring some very bright minds around creating solutions to problems that industry is facing right now. So we're not doing theoretical research. Everything we do is designed to find a solution that industry is having in the manufacturing line so that they can either overcome a challenge they're having or take advantage of opportunities that present themselves. I do want to add that we're very honored to be a part of this community. The fact that this community has been so supportive of the work that we've done so far, and I can say that we're just getting started. So we're 3 years in and we're already an established world quality research and development center. And you can't do that unless you have the support of the community in which you reside.
I just want to comment. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of OMIC, and I'm happy as well that it is in our community. I guess what I'm understanding is structurally, you are using the funds that you're given in order to develop the facility itself. And so my question is to you: have you also reached out for federal funds in order to get more funding to possibly add on to, be more green in your development of the building?
We haven't on this particular facility because we're close enough with the resources we have to build the building that obviously that's in front of you. We have applied to the federal government for additional funds for another building that will be used not for research and development, but as a business development center to help develop new companies, new technologies, to inform them about how they as companies can run economically more efficiently, greener, using new technologies, and at the same time, grow that partnership we have with the PCC OMIC Training Center so that they're developing training in areas that we are doing research in. We're also partnering with OMEP, the Oregon Manufacturing Extension Partnership, who we've been wanting to have come out here and have an office in this region so that we can start growing and expanding local businesses so that instead of people driving into Portland to go to work, they stay right here in the community. I realize that was only a partial answer, not really what you were asking. You were asking if we were asking for federal funds to make this facility more green.
Well, since you mentioned that you are working with the funds that you were given, so that's.
Yeah. None of the grants had yet come along that would have allowed us to do that. Of course, now there's plenty of money coming around, but by the time we actually get it applied, we'll have been through our process and maybe even have the building built, we hope.
How long do you expect for the construction?
Construction for the new facility is, I believe, 10 months.
It's set to finish October 2022.
Soon.
So nice 12-month process. It's going to be a very interesting place to work over there for the next 12 months.
Any other questions for the applicant?
One quick question. Conditions of approval, other than what Al had mentioned. Do you see any issues with any of those yourself?
No, I don't think so. The conditions are there for us to meet them.
Can
We'll
meet them.
I do have a suggestion. Can you guys add a couple of basketball courts?
What?
We've got a very large open space, and until the machines are in there, we've got to do something with that space.
It'll cover over the bicycle parking.
Yeah.
All right. There's no other questions for the applicant. We will move on.
Thank you.
Next in the order is, are there any proponents that wish to speak in favor of this? Seeing none, Are there any opponents that wish to speak against this? Also seeing none. Applicant has an opportunity to rebut the comments made. They're indicating they do not feel the need to rebut those comments. And so we are on to staff response.
I wanted to respond to the requested amended condition of approval number 19. Yeah, I'm fine with making an adjustment. I would recommend, just based on the structure of the sentence, that prior to the period at the end of the sentence, we put in parentheses per the finding in section 17.154.030S. That is on page 38, and that references our mention that there is a way to meet this condition of approval by providing an updated comment from their traffic engineer, either stating that the site distance is adequate or that the fence should be removed, in which case we're putting it on the record that then the city would work with the adjacent property owner to get that done. But that OMIC would have met their condition by providing that comment. So I'm happy to make that revision. That would then be 3 revisions. So the staff report would then be revised as of today's date. Those revisions would be to, on page 18, the number of parking spaces being provided. And then the other condition, section 17.100.100. And then the last one being the revision to condition of approval 19.
Any other? Okay. Great. Then we're going to close the hearing, and then the commission will take up deliberations. All right. What do you guys think?
Well, I've gone through this thing like everybody else has, a lot of reading here, but they comply with everything, meet all the satisfied statements. Approval, they're willing to have these other conditions of approval. We have been waiting for some time for this development to move on. I think I was very helpful that we got good explanation of exactly the purpose of this service building and what it does. I'm not talking about auto additives here. We're talking about something that actually makes something, that creates something, and it's going to be a useful thing to the community as well. There's really nothing in findings that I have here that says that I wouldn't want to approve it. I don't right now that I've seen. So it's just my comments. We discussed most of the things, my scribbles. Leave it at that.
I'd just like
Any-
to just again relay what Commissioner Blank just said and approve all of what Lori said of the conditions. Personally, I would love to see in the future, they're going to build future buildings that to integrate innovative techniques and clean and just innovative building structure. So then they can showcase more of what the future brings, more of to be a good example for future. That's just my personal opinion.
Right.
But I approve. I think you approve everything that's in the plan here.
I will add a comment on that one. I agree. It's kind of good if we can do that. WANA Credit Union built theirs to that standard, if I remember right. When it was approved, they had to meet that criteria, and they did meet it. but they're gonna be putting another building up at a different location. I don't know what they're gonna do with the old location, if they're gonna keep that or not. But I imagine they'll probably try to continue to do that. So at least they're an example in the community of people who are trying that. And I want to thank you for bringing the illustrations because these did not show us a lot.
This was great.
Did
Al.
not give us a vision of what this
You know,
looked like.
It's fine seeing plot plans and stuff, but this was excellent. I'm so glad you brought those. I'm sorry you guys can't see this on your screen. No camera? You can put
Bring
one
it
in
closer
front?
to the camera.
It's
You gotta run all the way back to the back of the room, Jeanette.
That's okay.
Oh, you're tall. Hold that up.
I'll send you.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, send them to Liz and she'll take care of it.
Thank you.
Very exciting. I know this has been in the plannings for a long, long time. Having been kind of in part very early stages and surveys and research and stuff. It's very exciting to see coming to fruition.
Might add that just for public knowledge, I think. I have been there. I think several of the people here have been on that site. Have been able to have the opportunity to take a tour of it right from the very beginning and watch its progress. So very familiar with the progress and what you're trying to do and how you're trying to engineer this and make it happen. Very impressive.
I've got a couple of things that I just thought of. Lori, is there anything in the code around glare? I don't know if solar panels would throw off glare, but it is pretty close to the airport. So I don't know if there's something in the code now.
There is, but typically it's just in the closer vicinity to the airport.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know it's a ways away. I just wanted to
Right.
bring it up.
Point.
Then the other question, this is probably a Chris question. When the parking estimation is for 50 employees, why is the traffic generation based on 25?
It was, actually, I could answer that. It was 50 per building. So we're just looking at the new use.
Okay,
So traffic generated based on the new use is the 25 employees in that building.
Okay. Great, thanks. That was everything I had. Any other commissioner comments?
I have a quick question on that. But isn't there going to be students as well? Not just employees and staff members? Or am I wrong?
Want us to answer that since the record is closed?
Can you
Okay.
answer that?
I can't answer that. Yeah, I don't know who else would be in the building. The 25 employees, if that's including students or not. Sorry, I don't know that.
I understand was they'd be going back and forth between PCC and other schools or whatever that are going to develop around there. They wouldn't be staying necessarily all the time in the building.
I would imagine there's going to be some back and forth. Yeah.
You like a campus.
Right.
From what I know, this parking standard is just based on square footage. So it does take that into account. It's a little wonky way to take that into account, but it does take that into account.
Okay. I'm just wondering if the students going to have parking spaces if they decide to drive in.
They are adequately parked here, 176. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. That's it.
All right.
Thank you.
If there's no other comment, I would entertain a motion. And I think that motion would be approval with the 3
Mhm.
changes that we previously discussed.
I'll make that motion that we approve and make those adjustments for those 3.
I second that.
All right. It has been moved and seconded to approve SDR 1-21 and SLDP 4-21, including it as presented, except for including the three changes we have discussed previously.
Mhm.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I would call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 I,
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And with that, we will round out the agenda here with calendar check at the very back of your packet. And so what's left of October here, there is on Halloween, the 31st, the police department is having their drive-through event. That is 4 to 6 p.m., not the 3 to 5 that's shown on the map, on the calendar. That's 4 to 6 p.m. On November 1st, there is a city work session at 6 p.m. and city council meets at 7 p.m. The city offices will be closed on Veterans Day, November 11th. November 15, work session at 6 and city council at 7 p.m. Thursday, the 18th, the Economic Development Committee meets at noon. I believe that's here.
Yes.
The 100-year celebration ad hoc committee meets at 1.
Is that still going?
Still going.
I don't think so.
Over, right?
I think that's,
If it's anything, it's probably the after action.
no, there is a, an ad hoc, committee for next year, not necessarily the 100th, but there is
okay,
to be an event for next year.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
Hopefully it'll be less than 116 degrees when that happens.
Yes.
Parks and Rec at 6 p.m. on the 18th, and it looks like we do have a planning commission
Yes.
meeting at 7 on the Thursday, the 18th.
this room's gonna be busy that day.
Yes. Yes. And then Thanksgiving on November 25th, and the 25th and the 26th, city offices will be closed. That rounds out the calendar. Are there any commissioner comments?
Other than the fact that I think it's a good meeting. We have many things that come out of this that will be really great for the growth of community in the county. And, you know, be interesting to see how this goes forward.
I'll join the chorus. You know, this is really exciting, and really looking forward to see how this grows. I think it's going to be amazing. Yeah, this will be fun. You're adding to the community and materials.
Mhm.
Any other commissioner comments? All right. Any?
Can staff keep one of your photos so they can have that now that we've approved this? To
Have,
could show it. to
give
people?
the client the other two, but those are
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you.
It's gonna be a historic piece one day.
And yeah,
Yeah. All right. Are there any staff comments?
just quickly, I'll provide an update. So the city was awarded a DLCD grant to update our housing needs analysis. We've been assigned to work with Angelo Planning Group on that update. So we did meet with their team today to just kind of go over the scope of work for that project. and that should kick off sometime after the beginning of the new year. And then also, we did release the RFP for the 50-year plan that went out October 22nd. And the proposals will be due November 22nd, and we would expect to award a contract again sometime after the beginning of the new year. And so that's going to be quite the endeavor. We're trying to figure out what the technical advisory committee for those groups will look like. And so we'll have more information on that here shortly. Chris, did you have anything?
I can give you a little bit of an update. You've seen we're still working on the sewer line on East Columbia, or the contractor is. We're working with them, wrap that up. There's a few punch list items related to that work that needed to be resolved. And so we're hopeful that that'll be complete here in a few weeks. And then we'll schedule in the paving when the weather permits. Let's see, the new well that was being built there off the extension of Crown Z is, we just wrapped up testing of it last week, and the consultants analyzing the production numbers. So we'll have a final determination about its capacity sometime in the next few weeks. So that's exciting. There's also a sewer pump station out at the end of Commerce Way, at the end of that new road that you've all probably seen. It went through its testing, startup, and it's ready to be put into production, into operation as soon as there's development out there, as soon as the plat's signed and things get moving. We've got a couple other projects that are in construction. One that the apartment projects in construction, you've all seen right there on the highway by the Peace Candle. They're going to town on the buildings and getting those both vertical right now. Site work's held up because the DEQ hasn't approved their dry wells, and so they haven't wanted to initiate any of the underground utilities, which is unfortunate because it sort of places things out of sequence. It's just a function of some issues of the DEQ with not having a person in place to approve that. So they hope to have somebody hired in the next couple of weeks, start to chip away at their backlog. But they essentially have one person to approve all the dry wells for the entire state. So let's see, and then we've got a couple projects that we're in, working with the consultants and design on. Maple Street Cottages is close to approval. Hope to see that go here in the next couple of months. Maple Street Eightplex is in design review. On that, we're really close. There's a partition on JP West for multifamily, and it's duplex there. We're hoping to have that wrapped up here fairly soon. Then we've got some new projects that Lori and I are working on North Kale Street subdivision, and another subdivision off of Northeast Elm. They're just north of the Caswell subdivision. So that's exciting. The city has a couple of projects that we've kicked off design of, and we just recently wrapped up the design for Old Portland Road, the sidewalk project. It'll be bidding. It'll go out next Friday, and that'll be bidding, over the course of November, and hopefully we can get some good response back, get that going in the spring. That's going to be a great project. It'll complete all of the missing sidewalk pieces from, basically from Dutch Canyon all the way north to where it connects to the highway. So pretty extensive project.
And working with the new construction that's going to be out there, new housing that we approved.
No,
On the
unrelated.
other side of the street, right?
Yeah, unrelated, because that was on the south side of Callahan.
You're talking about the opposite side then.
Well, it'd be
Well,
north of Dutch Canyon
The
Yeah,
Dutch-
Road, all the way north to the highway.
So
And it's being funded through the gas tax.
Right.
So and that's a city-led project, city-funded
All right.
project. The other one that we're just kicking off on design is a new water line on Bella Vista to our high zone reservoir. It's sort of a phase one project to create some reliability for our water line system, where we have critical piece of infrastructure essentially is our it's our link to that reservoir. It'll be kind of a secondary link to the reservoir for redundancy. So that will probably start next year sometime. And then we're also working on the storm master plan. We're about halfway done with that. We've got quite a bit to go. We're just kind of plugging along on that. And then Lori and I will probably kick off some street SDC updates next year as we get through other SDC updates. So it's a short list.
Yeah.
You seen any effect of COVID on any of your projects or anything like that?
I think it's honestly created more work.
I think the effect is that the supply chain is impacted and, or say costs have increased for materials. But no, nothing's slowed down.
Nothing slowed down.
I think there's been sort of, I think there's a lot more focus on projects than there was, honestly, and it seems like there's just a lot of energy to get things designed and moving, and COVID hasn't impacted that really. I think consultants, if you talk to them, by and large, are busier than they ever have been.
Okay, good to know.
All right. Any final comments?
I do have a couple of questions for staff. On the RFQ or RFP for the 50-year proposals, is just staff going to weigh in on the awardees, on the decision of the awardees, or you're asking, for example, this group or committee to participate on that process?
No, we have an established scoring methodology.
Okay.
And so we will have a group of staff review the RFPs. We also did ask Paul Vogel to be involved in that, just for an outside of an agency person to be involved.
Okay.
And then we would present that to council for their final decision.
And my other question is the city looking into improving the electrical at veterans? Since you guys mentioned the events, I know that has been an issue when having events at veterans, and I know that the idea of that ad hoc committee is to have the event again at Veterans Park, and the issue is still electrical. So I'm wondering if someone has mentioned it to staff to add it to the list, anything like that?
I have heard mention of it, but I would say that would probably be something that the Public Works Director, Dave, would need to answer, just because it likely would come out of the parks budget, which is a
Okay.
budget that he manages. So I can forward that comment to him for sure.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if there's budgeting, if anyone's looking at budgeting for that. I would recommend, though, that be discussed probably during the EDC goal setting.
Okay. That's good. Thank you.
All right. I think we are ready to adjourn. I have 8:19. Thank you for everybody's time and attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.